Hi everyone, it's Mira Raven and welcome to Magifest 5D. I am a multi-instrumentalist, composer, producer, and a coach, and I am here to bring you to your highest timeline. If you like to be inspired, motivated, and empowered with spiritual guidance and life lessons, then I think you're gonna love my channel. Definitely hit that like and subscribe button if this resonates with you, and let's get into it. So today we're going to talk about the shadow. Yes, the shadow. We are on Halloween week, and the shadow is something that I think that a lot of people are not aware of their shadow, or they'd rather not talk about or think about the fact that they could have a shadow. Everybody has a shadow. Everybody has a shadow side. Everybody has a dark side. And the interesting thing about the shadow is if you try to suppress it through, pretending, well, no, I'm a good person. I could never do anything wrong, right? Or, well, I identify as, a nice guy or a nice girl, and, I'm always, doing things from a place of love. The reality is we all have an ego. We all have a shadow. We're all human beings. We all have tendencies to be self-serving. And that doesn't mean that we're bad people. It's just that it's a complex system that we're running every day, every moment of every day. And when you look at it like that, you can have more compassion for yourself. And that's the thing about the shadow, is that it's not like this big bad wolf. It's not this monster. And I think that a lot of times we are afraid of our own shadow, right? So, you can imagine if you were walking down the street and you see your shadow casts alongside you, right? So the sun is shining down on you, and I'm sure you guys have seen this if you've ever been walking on a sidewalk or something, where you can see you and you see your shadow, right? And your shadow usually will cast larger than you actually are, right? Which is interesting when you think about this idea of the shadow being this big scary thing, and we want to avoid it, and we don't want to talk about it, and we sweep it under the rug because we're intimidated by its length, its how big it is, and it seems scary, right? Or even intimidating. But the reality is, it's kind of ridiculous. Like, it's kind of like totally harmless. Like, when you walk down the street and you see your shadow, you don't freak out, because even though it looks, really big, it's not actually a big deal. It's just an illusion. It's not really you. And so in real life, when we see our actual shadow, we're not afraid, because we know it's our shadow, right? But psychologically, in the psyche, within the psyche, our shadow selves, our shadow aspects, we forget that this is an illusion, and we can take on those shadow aspects and we can act them out and assume them to be part of our identity, our true, authentic identity. And in some ways, you could argue that the shadow self is part of your authentic identity in a way, in the sense that it's part of the system of the self. But you could also argue that it's not truly like who you are, right? Like, it's not all that you are. Because as I've said many times on this channel, you are expansive. you are expansive. And so, sure, it might be an element of you, it might be a part of you, but it's not all of you. It's not your entire identity. And a lot of times this shadow, I think, has more to do with the ego and like defenses that are basically set up by the ego to protect the ego, and to, maintain the self or maintain the ego's sense of identity. So one thing with the shadow that I want you to really start to think about is really ask yourself, what are things about yourself that you wish you could change? What are things about yourself that you don't like or that you are very critical of? And I think just being very honest with yourself about what those things are, and then being able to find compassion for yourself, being able to really embrace your shadow. And I talked about I think it was either last week before that, giving your subconscious a hug. I feel the same way about the shadow. I think you need to learn how to love your shadow and understand that your shadow is just like it's just a part of you that is, it's almost like a little kid that, is maybe a problem, creating a problem or a problem child, but that problem child is they're not really a bad child. Maybe they're hurt, and maybe they're doing something because they feel sad, or they feel pain, or they feel like they're not important, and they're afraid, so they're acting out, right? And I think that the shadow has a lot of roots in that type of archetype, that type of behavior, that type of pattern. So I think if you can recognize that aspect of yourself, of what does the inner child feel? Is this a response to a past trauma or a past hurt? Right? Is this a defense mechanism? Is this a way of, and a lot of times too, sometimes it's protective, right? Sometimes I notice this in my relationships with people and connections I've had with people, that it's really common that when somebody's really insecure, they will lash out. They will try to hurt you or try to say something mean or rude, especially if they think, like, you could say something to somebody, they could misunderstand you, and because they're insecure, they read what you're saying as an attack, because they're literally, it's just like their little, again, it's their little ego, their little inner child that feels like they're being bullied, when the reality is they're probably misunderstanding you or misreading your words, or they have their own projection. And that'll be another video that I'll do a separate video on, going into projections in depth, because that is a subject that I feel like I have a lot of experience and wisdom to share about. But going back to our topic for today, shadows. The projections, though, can get kind of caught up, and people can project onto you, right? And that is to me, that's kind of part of the shadow self as well. Like, the shadow self is the one that will start to project and deflect and ignore and gaslight and do all this sort of manipulative stuff, because it's coming from a place of, I don't feel safe. In order to feel safe, I need to be in control. In order to be in control, I need to manipulate or mess with reality so that I can feel safe. And while it's toxic and it's not good, you can at least start to begin to understand whether it is somebody else's shadow that is coming out or your own that is coming out. because I think it's very important to be aware of both. Be aware of when your shadow is acting up, and be aware of when somebody else's shadow is acting up. And in both situations, try to find compassion. It's sometimes really hard, especially when you feel like the person that is lashing out at you is deliberately trying to hurt you. But you just have to remember that deep within that person, it's not even that they're trying to hurt you in the way that you think. They might be trying to hurt you, but it's more about the fact that it's less about them saying, I want to hurt this person, and it's more likely that they're saying, I need to protect myself. I'm afraid. I see a monster. And again, you're the monster. They project that you're the monster. They need to protect themselves. They need to do these things right now. Otherwise, they could be in danger. And that's all they see. They see the monster. They see the big shadow, right? That seems overwhelming and intimidating. And that's what they see. They don't see you. They don't see the real person. They see whatever illusions that they project onto you. So what happens is they respond to that, and then you're confused because you're like, what? I'm a person. I'm not a shadow. I'm not a monster. I'm not any of these things. But it doesn't matter, because if they're in that space and they're not aware of their shadow, that's when all that stuff is going to come out. And same thing for yourself. You might be in their shoes. You might be the one who somebody says something to you and suddenly you react very quickly. You are upset. You feel like you want to hurt that person, or you want them to feel you want to get back at them because you feel like they're trying to undercut you or this or that, and you got to play their game and get down on their... Don't do it, because that's not you. That's your shadow. That's your ego and your shadow working in tandem to protect you from the threat. But when you bring your consciousness in, your consciousness can say, wait a minute. Hold up. I know what's going on. We're not partaking. No, we're going to sit ourselves down and have a cup of tea. Put on your slippers, put on your comfy clothes, whatever your happy place is, and go to it. Don't put your energy into trying to fight your shadow, into trying to fight the other person's shadow. Don't do it. Or do it, but it's going to be a lot of energy that you're wasting, that you could be spending on doing something you love. Right? So the point I want you to see is that your shadow is not something you need to be afraid of. It's not something to be concerned about. And that when you take the time to embrace it instead of resisting it, you can live in peace. Because just like when you're walking down the street and you have a shadow by your side, your shadow's there. But it's not affecting your ability to walk down the street and do what you need to do. And the same thing with your shadow. Your shadow is there. It's a part of you. You don't have to play into it. You don't have to get rid of it. You don't have to do anything. You just have to keep being you and keep remembering who you are versus what your shadow is. I hope that is helpful to you. If you found that helpful, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. I'm building this channel from the ground up. I'm super excited to be sharing wisdom with you every week, and I'm working really hard to do that. I also have a TikTok page as well with the same name, MatchFest5D. I just do shortened versions of these videos to keep you enlightened and empowered and on the way to your highest timeline. Just a reminder, I am doing a coaching cohort program in January 2026. So you can visit my website to learn more about that, www.matchfest.space. The link is below. I hope you have a beautiful, wonderful day and week, and I will see you next time. Peace, everyone.